Ops 6 Zombies has left quite a few major story pieces on the table. After the release of Reckoning to cap off Black Ops 6 Zombies, many fans, including myself, have expressed dissatisfaction with the way a lot of the narrative threads from the Dark Aether storyline were resolved. If they were even resolved at all. And so I wanted to make a video where I went over all of, or at least the majority of, the unresolved plot threads, as well as the ones that I feel weren't resolved in a satisfactory way. This way, not only can I explain to you guys my feelings on different parts of the story, and you can respond with your own feelings in the comments below, but also people can quickly figure out what's left hanging in the Dark Aether story and narrative, and where we might be going in the future for Black Ops 7 and beyond. To begin, Black Ops 6 was set up as the conclusion to this introductory arc of the Dark Aether story, beginning in Black Ops Cold War and continuing in the past with Vanguard Zombies and the future with Modern Warfare 3. This pivotal time in the history of the Dark Aether story that concluded Richtofen's journey was the key structure of the way all of the game stories were told. While it serves as a direct sequel to Black Ops Cold War, the two titles that have released with the zombies between the two also propped it up. Vanguard gave us the history of Gabriel Craft and the introduction of some Chaos story elements, both of which would be pivotal in Black Ops 6, and Modern Warfare 3 gave us the story of Terminus Outcomes and Ava Jansen, people living in the world racked by the consequences of Project Janus, even decades later. This major prop-up by every other title meant that narratively, Black Ops 6 had major shoes to fill. However, it seems many of the major plot threads set up to be resolved here were simply forgotten about, or retconned away, or brushed aside in order to make way for this new era of the Dark Aether story, taking place inside the heart of the Dark Aether, with the original characters in Black Ops 7. Terminus Outcomes here is a great example. Modern Warfare Zombies introduced us to Terminus Outcomes, a mercenary group led by Jack Fletcher. Fletcher had been a guard at Terminus Island, and was clearly so affected by his time there, he would name his mercenary group after the island. This seemed to suggest that, whatever his arc may be, something that was defining for him would be featured in Black Ops 6. However, when the time came to explore Terminus Island, Fletcher did not have a role. Not only does Fletcher not feature in the map leave fans of his character disappointed, but it leaves some pretty major lingering questions that now feel set up for no reason. Why was Fletcher so changed by Terminus? Why name the mercenary outfit Terminus Outcomes? We assumed during Modern Warfare 3 there would be some kind of twist reveal in Black Ops 6 they actually knew what Aetherium was because of his time at Terminus and played Zakhaev for a fool. But it never came to pass. As it turns out, he was taken off the island before the events of Black Ops 6 Zombies even unfold, all in a throwaway intel. Some other great examples of this include the Janus shareholders / board of directors. Set up in the data entries Richtofen wrote during Cold War relating to Project Janus, there was a mysterious cabal of individuals who Richtofen seemed to need to answer to, and who privately funded Project Janus. Yet we never really get a concrete answer for them. There's connections with the French syndicate, but beyond then, the mysterious aspect of them was a lot better when it was mysterious. Now we have the Societe Occult. Speaking of mysterious cabals, the Societe Occult was set up in Vanguard Zombies as what was essentially the Illuminati equivalent in the Dark Aether story. A powerful group of people with knowledge of the Dark Aether and rune magic who were rich and ruled the world from behind the scenes, orchestrating events. And time and again we've theorized this group, or the board of directors, could be the Societe Occult still existing in the modern day, including the Janus investors. And yet this group seems to have mysteriously disappeared, never being mentioned again. Project Janus. While we're on the topic of Project Janus, there are many loose threads here left untied. Firstly, what exactly was the point of the name? Time and again we look to the god Janus and the themes of gateways, dualities, and beginnings and endings. You can definitely interpret the beginnings and endings as a metatextual thing about this part of the story being both of those things, and Richtofen's control over the Dark Aether realm with the SAM AI and the particle accelerator at Janus Towers. But in terms of Richtofen's choice of the name, why? Secondly, what exactly did people think the purpose of it was? We know Richtofen wanted to revive his family, but what exactly were they selling investors on here? What was the front-facing purpose of Project Janus? The message, not the one Richtofen was actually using them for. Office of Extra-Regular Activities, we learned in Cold War from Carver that Eddie had spent some time in a government department called the Office of Extra-Regular Activities. We get a few details on it from Carver in this piece of intel that I'll play now. Apparently it was a shadow subgroup under the DS&T, specializing in clandestine sciences. Not that that clarifies anything. It seemed that this shadow subgroup was going to be a big part in Eddie's story with the government and how he began to research the Dark Ether. However, it was never mentioned again. Moving forward, we have the mysterious hidden race on the loading screen for Terra Maledicta. This redacted race was implied by the lore and their appearance at the time to be the Apothecans potentially, or maybe the Disciples, but we never got a follow-up, and they never reappeared. While we are discussing the Vanguard era of story, what about Kortifex's son? We learned that Kortifex turned his son with Syraxis into some sort of other creature, due to him not wanting a child, as them being a threat to his bloodline. We know Kortifex enacted some sort of horrible cruelty on said child, likely turning them into some sort of other creature, likely similar to what he did to the Decimator shield. At the time, it seemed to be setting up that Kortifex's son was turned into Mr. Peaks. However, this was never confirmed and remains unfollowed up on. There was the perfect opportunity to tie this loose thread with the Gorgafex wonder weapon potentially being his son, but again, it's never mentioned. Now we have Primordial Aetherium, a substance set up in Black Ops Cold War as some sort of older and more powerful version of Aetherium. We theorized at the time it may be something closer to Prima Materia, and with the Sentinel artifact and actual Prima Materia being present in Black Ops 6 zombies, we thought there might be a parallel there. Yet, it's not been mentioned at all. Moving forward, the Red Orb. There's an orb in Black Ops Cold War that lets out the laughter of children, seemingly holding powerful memories according to Piotr.
I have seen many things in my travels. For all its horror, there is beauty in this deep, dark ether. The crystals, they take our memories. They make us forget who we were. But our memories do not fade. They are taken from us and form something new, something magical. Orbs. I have seen many in my time here. So many memories, so many stories to tell. Memories of a Russian scientist, of an American spy. There is one orb. It is different. Special. It is like me. It can cross between worlds. It is filled with the laughter of a child. I may never learn who the child is or what happened to them, but their memories are powerful.
We assume that these memories were likely Samuel or related to him, and would somehow be instrumental in bringing him back to life. We also theorized during Vanguard they could potentially be remnants of Kortifex's child as well, or perhaps some combination of he and Samuel. However, this was never followed up on, and the Red Orb in the Second Outbreak quest, or who or what that orb is, will likely forever remain a mystery. Especially interesting because in said Second Outbreak quest, this Red Orb bonds with Mr. Peaks, of which you get a burnt note of Mr. Peaks from this supposed lost child that the orb's essence is from, saying that Mr. Peaks keeps them safe in the dark place and likes to play hide and seek, among other things. And the fact the note is burnt, we thought surely this has to be a connection to Richtofen's son Samuel, who burned to death. Yet, come Black Ops 6, Richtofen gets his family back in one of the alternative endings, but this is seemingly unconnected at all, as far as we can tell, to this Red Orb and to this Mr. Peaks note, so surely that was somehow leading into something being set up, but it's just been completely abandoned, and this is probably why a lot of people are feeling unsatisfied with Reckoning's ending, because there's so many things that seem like they would be playing into the ending and playing into Richtofen's plan that just never materialized. Furthermore, two characters that seem to have been sidelined are Gorev and Jager. Both characters leave Forsaken together in a helicopter, mentioning an American contact who can get them both jobs in the country. It seemed like this was suggesting they'd been recruited for Project Janus by none other than Richtofen himself and would return in Black Ops 6. Then, with the return of Klaus, who shares a voice actor with Jager, it seemed all but cemented. However, neither made appearances. Not on Janus Towers or any other map, but they would have been perfect there, with it being the scientific one. Valentina's Berlin contact. During the build for Mauer der Toten, we saw that Valentina had a contact in Berlin whom she was working with to restore the Reichstag from the Dark Ether. This contact was someone in the real world who was helping her, and their mentioning of other allies as well seemed to be suggesting Valentina had some sort of faction in the outside world helping her in her goals. This would be some real-world group of Germans trying to help restore the Nazis to power, or was also possibly someone working with Eddie unbeknownst to her and only manipulating her to serve his goals. Neither possibility was ever followed up on. Samantha's early life. While we are on the topic of Germany, another big loose thread that will likely never be resolved now that Samantha Maxis is apparently dead is the situation surrounding her earliest years in the universe. We know she grew up as an orphan, but beyond that, we have very little to work with. We had often theorized that Eddie getting adopted and growing up with a family, but leaving her behind in the orphanage would be a major character point for the two, marking their separation, both literally and emotionally, after growing up as adoptive siblings in the house. However, we never even get confirmation Maxis ended up in the same orphanage as Eddie, much less any indication of what it was going to be like for her growing up. And to be honest, this is the most interesting thing I think we should have seen more information on throughout Black Ops 6. The early years of Richtofen and Samantha and how and why they separated. Yet, we only really get a little bit about Richtofen's time getting adopted by Kraft and his nightmares of it being his turn from Monty's house. That is it.
The boy is having nightmares again. The terrible things. He wakes drenched in sweat, screaming that it's his turn. He does not remember in the morning. I am beginning to wonder if he is actually taking the pills or if he is just lying to me. Either way, the boy needs a fresh start. Something to help him forget the things that haunt him. Perhaps we both do. Weeks ago, I applied to a project in America. My background in the occult and my unique, field experience make me a perfect candidate. I can't say too much even here, but the work is exciting. An excursion along the frontiers of science. The CIA are calling it MK Ultra. I haven't heard back yet, but I'm keeping my hopes high. This could be exactly what Eddie and I need. Perhaps in America we can find a way to end the nightmares. For both of us.
The Chaos story. This loose thread, or to be honest, many threads, this one has really rubbed me the wrong way, because Treyarch have very poorly half-returned the Chaos storyline.
Craft to Special Forces. I have an update about that page from the Tome of Rituals that you fought so hard to obtain. Bellicar and I have completed our study of its contents, and it appears we struck gold, as the Americans are fond of saying. The page recounts how a group of priests and officials in Okinawa Prefecture banded together to save their lord from what they considered demonic possession. In fact, this man had bonded with Syraxis, much the same way that you are currently bonded to your ethereal allies. They arranged a visit to the swampy island where you now find yourselves, and ambushed him with a special relic, while the page gives specific instructions on the use of that relic to sever the bond between a Dark Ether entity and its human host. It gives no description of the relic itself. It reminds me of when I studied the writings of Alistair Rhodes, an amateur demonologist and personal hero of mine. Rhodes wrote about different objects of power that he called sentinel artifacts, but I was never able to find out exactly what they were. Nevertheless, if we can find the relic we seek at Shinonuma, I am quite certain I can use it on Von List and trap Kortifex in that little scepter of his.
In Vanguard, like I mentioned before, we got a small offhanded name drop of Alistair Rhodes. This had fans of the lore debating whether or not this was a reintroduction of certain aspects of the Chaos story, almost as a nod or Easter egg, or if it was trying to tell us the Dark Aether story was canon to the Chaos story continuity. At first, I was unsure, but as more and more Chaos stuff was mentioned during Black Ops 6, I began to be a firm believer in the idea that the Chaos story and the Dark Aether story were one and the same, just taking place at different times, in the same universe. However, during Shattered Veil, when we saw Josiah Shem bear the robes of the Order from the Chaos storyline, it seemed it was all finally going to come to a head. We were finally going to get many of the lost answers. We would get a bit of lore about the Order and what happened with them after the Chaos story, leading into how Shem would have had the robes. Perhaps he was an excommunicated Chaos priest, or had started his own subsect of the Order. However, it was literally never addressed. It was at this point I came to realize that we would not ever get a confirmation or denial of the exact canonicity of the Chaos storyline, largely because it seemed like it didn't really matter for what Trek were trying to tell with Black Ops 6. It was just being used for easy excitement points by bringing back familiar names and concepts like the Sentinel Artifact without committing to actually being stuck to the Chaos's previous world building. It really was key jingling in its truest form, and it really is unfortunate because a sequel to Chaos could be magnificent, and if it was introduced and reintroduced in a meaningful way in Black Ops 6, I think things would have played out very differently as well. Moving on to Ravenov's immortality. In Modern Warfare Zombies, we learned that Ravenov had somehow become essentially immortal, aging very little in the time since Black Ops Cold War. In the dialogue, he plays off Ava prying into how exactly he remained alive for so long, and it becomes especially interesting when mirrored against the Requiem heads who seem to age faster before their deaths in 1996. This had us theorizing at the time that whatever happened to infect Requiem with the Dark Aether would also somehow change Ravenov and allow him to live for much longer, especially because 2 of the 4 Aetherium vials were missing. Perhaps even with him consuming one of these vials of Aetherium made from Requiem that are found in the Modern Warfare Zombies intro cutscene. However, Requiem have now been catapulted into the Dark Aether at the ending of Reckoning, with Ravenov on the outside. So if we ever do see a follow-up on his immortality, it would have to be after Requiem's escape from the Dark Aether, probably by the end of Black Ops 7. And we have no explanation for why Strauss is among them when he does not seemingly get plunged into the Dark Aether with the rest, and as to why the Dark Aether is inside the Sentinel Artifact itself is yet to be determined as well. We know Richtofen says he apparently trapped a damn universe to bring his family back. Is this implying he trapped a pocket dimension of the Dark Aether itself that might contain remnants of that old multiverse that got plunged into the Dark Aether at the ending of Tag the Toten, and that contains some sort of alternate version of his family? I'm not exactly sure. And is that how the original characters are back? So many questions for how this will all make sense come Black Ops 7, and what it means for having a pocket dimension of the literal heart of the Dark Aether inside the artifact, probably the universe that we see in the amulet. This brings me on to the second part of this video, and the other half of this conversation. Things that did technically get resolved or followed up on in Black Ops 6 that felt extremely dissatisfying as a fan of the lore. I understand a lot of this is frankly to taste and can be largely up to personal interpretation and subjective, so I have picked 2 things that I think most people universally agrees on being poorly executed that also have large implications for the future of the storyline. The first one is very much related to Ravenov's immortality and the future. Ava Jansen. The creation of Ava Jansen is something that has been a very contentious point of discussion since the concept was introduced in Modern Warfare Zombies. To nutshell the discussion for you, in Modern Warfare Zombies we learned that Requiem had taken genetic samples of everyone they had in custody, without their permission, according to Ravenov. This genetic material had been used to create Ava Jansen, using Ravenov's DNA, along with Samantha Maxis's, to create Ava, and with Elizabeth Gray carrying her to term as a surrogate mother. other. While Ravenov had never been in Requiem's custody to ever have his genetic material taken, most people just assumed he meant Project Janus or the director and just largely considered them the same entity. This was a point of contention because of how potentially hot this topic is. Depending on how it was handled, it could come off as quite creepy or perverted, and frankly felt very out of character for Eddie at the time. However, as the game went on and we learned more about Ava's connection with the entity and the way the entity seemed to protect the world from the Shadowsmiths, we began to make different guesses about her creation. It now seemed that her creation was actually likely done to create the entity, with the idea that this entity would protect our world from the Dark Aether and these Shadowsmith entities attempting to escape. We assumed that somehow, after Zykor fell, now confirmed on Reckoning, these Shadowsmiths would be a surprise that Eddie didn't plan for, and the creation of Ava Jansen was his emergency plan to deal with it. And with the vague verbiage they use about DNA and samples, we didn't have any hard confirmation that Eddie hadn't somehow made Ava using genetic material from blood, hair, or other leftovers from the Requiem crew being medically treated, rather than him ever explicitly harvesting reproductive materials from the likes of Sam, Gray, and Ravenov. This felt far more in line with him, and the biological warping properties of the Dark Aether made this feel incredibly possible, whilst it's not currently possible in the real world. However, with the Mum Gene's intel and Reckoning, things changed.
What the hell? Carver M, Weaver G, Gray E, Maxis. Oh, Sam. You motherfucker! You! Whoa. What are you doing? They took them! They harvested them! To what? Our DNA! Richtofen took our fucking DNA! It's all here! Me, Weaver, Carver, they have Max's eggs, Maya! Her fucking eggs! But how the hell they even have those? After she returned from the Dark Aether the first time, Richtofen, he ran tests on her. He tortured her. It was horrific. Weaver told me about it while we were locked up on Terminus Island. Even if I'd known earlier, it's not like I had the power to change anything back then. Oh, fuck, I was so useless! That has to be when they took them. She never told me. Why didn't she tell me? Maybe she didn't know. Oh, God, I can't. Grab what you need and trash the rest. What now? Now, I am gonna make myself useful.
There's a lot to unpack here. Firstly, this pivots the direction of Samantha's time in Block 8 to genuine torture, despite both her and the director in Cold War saying it was only to unlock her powers and wasn't just for the goal of torture. It was for the ultimate goal of trapping the Forsaken, and Richtofen getting a bit of revenge along the way. But this makes it a lot more jarring. We also see that Eddie did, in fact, deliberately harvest reproductive material from Sam by taking her literal eggs, which drastically shifts the morality of his character and also frankly comes off as a tad weird and perverted. I don't even know how they concepted this. However, the final thing here that I think drastically shifts other characters and implications going forward that I haven't seen many people really discuss here, I think they are trying to say that Gray is going to be behind creating Ava. They grab what they need and trash the rest, and Gray says she is going to make herself useful with the samples. This seems to leave the hanging implication that she will choose to create Ava and impregnate herself with some Samantha's child. While this in of itself as a change would not be bad necessarily, as it gives Gray back the agency in the decision, it's what isn't here that changes things as well. Notice in the list of subjects, one key sample here is missing. There is no Ravenov sample. And as we said during the life cycle of Modern Warfare 3, this adds up, as there has been no period Ravenov was in Requiem custody to be harvested. This means that whatever genetic material comes from Ravenov here, and it's likely to be his sperm, considering that Samantha's samples are literally her eggs, has yet to be harvested. And if Gray is the one behind this choice now, and not Eddie, as he has seemingly now been written out of the story, getting his happy ending with his family, and I guess we're not supposed to think about him much moving forward, are they saying Gray will harvest these samples from Ravenov? This implication is especially dangerous because Ravenov seems very hostile about this happening to him, and like he does not consent at all. This leaves a very dangerous route for Gray to be going down, where unless something off the wall we can't expect happens, she's going to do some very messed up stuff to Ravenov upon her exit from the Dark Ether. Essentially, there's a major threat and there's a greater purpose for this, I do not know, or maybe she's very traumatized from the time in the Dark Ether and whatever they go through in the course of Black Ops 7. This is all yet to be determined. For all we know, Richtofen will help them out. The Janus version, not the new version we see in Black Ops 7. But considering the device that is used in Modern Warfare Zombies' intro cutscene is in the background of Gray's recording in 1996, it does imply that she at least played an active role in the science behind the canisters and the device, and whatever plan they had was their decision. They were dying due to the Dark Ether exposure that they are about to experience in Black Ops 7, and had to purge themselves as they were walking Dark Ether time bombs, and it was aging them and killing them, so they would have died anyways regardless. And they were literally a threat to the world, which is why the canisters can start outbreaks. Their very existence was dangerous, as the Dark Ether literally changes their DNA. And lastly, to cap this video off, I wanted to discuss the biggest fumbled story beat of Black Ops 7, the supposed assassination of Eddie Richtofen. The final twist in Black Ops 6 Zombies takes what was once the most emotionally gripping mystery of the Dark Ether storyline and turns it into something so hollow. For years, Richtofen's family tragedy stood as the foundation for his transformation into the director of Requiem. The idea that Samantha Maxis might have played a role in the assassination, or that Weaver had been manipulated but still complicit, gave the story a heavy moral weight. It made sense that Richtofen would orchestrate Requiem's rise while carrying the grief and suspicion that his closest allies were somehow tied to his loss. Reckoning blows that apart by introducing Adrian Kruger, a last-minute antagonist who becomes the true culprit. After the Vietnam War, Eddie was recruited into the US government by Kruger, where he met Mary, Kruger's secretary. What Eddie never knew was that Mary was secretly working as an informant, exposing Kruger's illegal weapons and human trafficking operations. Once Kruger discovered her betrayal, he put Mary and Samuel into a safe house under Samantha's watch, then tricked Weaver into carrying out their execution by making him believe he was acting on Samantha's orders. Weaver torched the safe house, unknowingly killing Eddie's wife and child. The twist doesn't feel earned. Instead of pushing the existing characters into more complicated, morally ambiguous territory, it absolves them of guilt. Samantha's Cold War admission about feeding intel to Weaver is directly contradicted, and her burden of guilt is erased with a shrug. Weaver, who once carried the horror of his actions, is reduced to a pawn duped by Kruger's deception. Richtofen, too, is left without blame. His family wasn't killed because of his past or his enemies, potentially if he was doing something bad with harvesting the Dark Ether due to his trauma from the old Ether story and connections to it, but simply because his wife happened to be an informant. They were all at the wrong place at the wrong time, and it's leading too much credence to coincidence, when how on earth do Samantha Maxis and Richtofen get tied together in such a tragedy that has absolutely no connection to their history in the Ether and coming into the new universe? It is baffling, and really spits in the face of those who were so engaged in the mystery of this plot thread for so long, and has been the beating heart of the entire Dark Ether story, the reason for everything happening, and the formation of Requiem. The plot twist is not tragedy born of consequence, that's tragedy written out of convenience. It turns a story of personal stakes into a bland revelation that shifts everything onto a villain who never mattered until the very end. This is the first time we hear of him, and likely the last. What bothers me most is how this twist guts the emotional depth that the Cold War era carefully built. The assassination had a weight precisely because it was tied to the people players already knew and cared about. The moral ambiguity of Samantha and Weaver's roles created speculation, conflict, and the possibility of betrayal within the core cast.
Secure connection. Established.
X-Ray 1 standing by for instructions.
Weaver,
What I'm about to tell you is sensitive, compartmented information for your ears only.
Copy.
Do not speak about this to any company assets. You are off the grid until the deed is done. Understood?
I said copy.
Target is at a safe house maintained by the BND in Bremen. Coordinates are waiting at your usual dead drop. Target is accompanied by a young male child. I've arranged for him to be away with his mother during your operational window.
Yeah, good.
Approach under cover of darkness, eliminate the target, torch the place. Simple as that.
Any intel I need to retrieve?
Negative. Make the hit, light the fire. Do not search the premises. Am I clear?
Fine. I'll make it quick. Is this you, Maxis? Because this cloak and dagger bit is not your usual mode of operations.
Terminating. Secure connection.
This fucking job.
By stripping that away and dropping responsibility onto Kruger, this story avoids grappling with its own darkest themes. It's a bait and switch, literally as the name of the intel implies, that removes complexity in favour of a clean, easy answer. But in doing so, it cheapens everything that came before. The result is a storyline that feels broken. Years of fan investment, layered intel, and compelling character guilt are undercut by a single retcon that explains nothing and leaves the narrative weaker. It retroactively diminishes the Cold War story, leaving threads unresolved and emotional stakes flattened. What was once a heartbreaking mystery about trust, betrayal, and consequence is now reduced into a forgettable twist pinned on a disposable villain. For me, no explanation at all would have been better than this one, and even that would have been a terrible way for this to go. This twist summarizes best how I feel the ending to this introductory arc to the Dark Aether story was handled. It feels like after the exit of Joe Puralewski, the other writers involved had less interest in actually resolving the plot threads he had set up, seeking instead to simply bide our interest and wrap up the story as quickly as possible to get it out of the way and start a new chapter with the original characters. Everything about this final chapter feels so rushed and unearned. Things are just dismissed quickly or forgotten about to move forward to Black Ops 7 and to try and sell us yet another game. However, this ended up just retroactively making the entire story saga worse. Before Black Ops 6, I would have argued that Cold War is likely some of the most interesting writing ever done by the Zombie team and would have recommended it to any fans of the Zombies lore. I would still recommend to this day watching my entire Cold War Zombie storyline video. It just sucks that so much of that premise is based on what's going to come next, and those mysteries that it builds throughout the entire narrative have now been diminished. But with the fumbling of basically every interesting plot point set up for the sake of moving forward in a rush, it now all feels incredibly pointless. But what do you think? Do you feel like there are other threads that feel unfinished I didn't mention? Or are you actually satisfied with how some of this stuff has wrapped up? Let me know whether you agree or disagree, and hopefully we can start a discussion in the comments about how to move forward now for the Dark Aether story. I think that just saying this was all bad or somewhat true doesn't really translate into actionable feedback for the writing team, and there's definitely some gems in there, it just has all been executed very poorly. The game had a very strong launch storyline wise and gameplay wise. The gameplay has remained very strong throughout the year, but the story has completely trickled off, with the cracks first appearing in Citadel and being cemented come the Tomb, and now in hindsight, when we have the greater picture, it makes everything feel very pointless, because for example the shock reveal of the Sentinel artifact in Terminus' ending feels completely redundant now that we know it could have really been any artifact and it basically had no real connection to the Chaos story because they don't really explain much. It's important that we as a community are having these discussions for the writing team, and hopefully they can take the feedback on board. And so the discussions on what we want to see going forward and how to fix things are just as important. That's part of why I make these videos. So hopefully some of these threads can be readdressed moving forward. But we will have to see where we are come a year's time. Will they manage to scrape together a really good story this time around? We will have to wait and see. But for now, thank you for watching the video. Make sure to subscribe if you're not already for latest and greatest Call of Duty news information. So anyways, thank you for watching, and bye. To conclude this video, I want to shout out the fact that I finally decided to make a Patreon and Cameo account, both of which will be linked below if you want to help support the channel. On Patreon, you can sign up for the lowest tier of just $1.50 a month to get exclusive access for my Discord, where we can discuss Zombies lore, trivia, or whatever you desire. A place where you lot, my community, can better connect. Your names will also appear at the end of videos thanking you. For $5.50 a month, you get all of that, and I will be doing exclusive exclusive monthly Q&As. And for $16.50 a month, you again get all of that, and I will be doing exclusive lore videos, such as unpacking niche parts of the Treyarch documents I've been breaking down on my channel that don't as much suit a main channel video. For the highest tier, only for those with the ability to and who really want to help out the channel, you get special bonuses I've yet to determine and verbal shoutouts at the end of every video. Over on Cameo, I can do funny videos reading lines from zombies, memes like how do we tell him, birthday wishes for friends or family, or whatever else you desire, practically anything. Of course, none of this is necessary, just watching and enjoying the videos helps me immensely and I greatly appreciate it. However, I think it's about time I start setting up additional revenue streams because Zombies' popularity is tumultuous and always goes through ups and downs. As I'm sure you've lately seen on the channel, viewership is down a lot. We go through big highs when new games release, but then during these drought periods, I need more income stability so I don't have to worry as much about it and I can focus more on improving the quality of the content. My highest quality videos are not always the ones that best please YouTube algorithms, so instead, this way I can produce my best work knowing I don't have to think as much about how well the content's going to perform. So if you'd like to support me on Patreon for exclusive content or would like a simple Cameo message, you can do so to further support me via the links below, but only if you can afford it and you actually want to help me. Don't feel like you are forced to, don't worry, I'll survive. It would just help relieve some of the pressure during inconsistent periods on the channel so I don't have to solely rely on AdSense revenue and still maintain the sheer quantity and quality of content that I put out. Obviously I pump out literally a boatload of content and some of these are absolutely crazy projects over hour-long videos, so it's a lot on my plate, especially when these videos don't perform particularly well. And I've not been doing many sponsorships lately to help supplement revenue either, so it would greatly help. Thank you for any generous person once again who does kindly support the channel. It means the absolute world and will really help keep this boat afloat.